Hi, today I'm here with Elena Campbell-Martinez, a bilingual Latina actress who has created memorable performances on both film and TV. Elena started her acting career in Antigua, Guatemala. Her most notable role was in Stars Vida. She had guest appearances in popular TV comedies like Modern Family and Big Bang Theory, and has recently guest starred on TV dramas such as The Rookie, Rebel, and 911. How are you doing today, Elena?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me here.
My pleasure. Can we kick off with a little bit about your background? Why did you become an actress?
Well, I took a roundabout way to get here. I started out straight out of college as a management consultant, if you can believe that. I didn't know what I wanted to do after college, but they were hiring on campus, and it was the big eight firms, the big eight accounting firms used to have these management consulting divisions, and they would come on campus and they'd say, "We'll hire you and teach you how to be a management consultant." And I was like, sold. I can learn something else and I can get paid for doing it. So I got hired by Arthur Anderson and Company, which then became Accenture, and I was there for 14 years. And after 14 years of doing that work, which was rewarding, but a lot of travel, really hard work, I decided to leave and go to Guatemala for a year to do volunteer work. I thought it'll be a good break. Maybe something will come to me. I will figure out what is the next step in my life. So I took that leap and I went to Guatemala. And 6 years later, I was still in Guatemala and I decided to take another leap, and I decided to move here to Los Angeles to be an actress. And that's because when I was in Guatemala, I had started doing acting in community theater and I just loved it. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do acting no matter what, because I love it, I might as well try it in LA where people do it professionally. And so I moved here 17 years ago and I've been doing acting ever since. So it's my third career, basically.
Wow, that's a little big change.
Very big. Yeah. But I feel like each step along the way kind of set me up for the next step. Like working as a management consultant teaches you, first of all, how to understand what other people do, because that's what you do. You go in and you understand what other people do. You figure out what are the things that make them successful and what are the things that get in their way. And then you tell them, this is how you can do this better. So going to do social work in Guatemala was kind of the same thing, only on a much smaller scale. Instead of a giant corporation, now I'm looking at a family, a nuclear family, or the social work department of this organization that I worked with. And I'm saying, okay, what do you do? What are you trying to achieve? How can you do it better? How can you get some of this stuff out of your way and have a more successful family life or social work practice? And then I just randomly happened to, I don't know if it was random, I think it was always in me, but I started doing acting in Guatemala because I'd go to the plays and I'd see people doing plays. And I kept thinking that would be so fun. And again, I had to apply that. Okay, how does this work? How does this acting thing work? How do you do it? How can you get out of your own way? How can you do it better? And the rest is history, as we say.
Did you take a lot of lessons? I like how you brought up the point around bringing ideas from one experience to another and building off of it. Was there still a big learning curve when making a sort of big career change after?
Yes. When I was in Guatemala, I started doing a community theater, but I also at the same time started taking lessons. There was a woman there. She was Swiss, Russian Swiss, and she had had her own acting school for 30 years in Paris. And she had retired to Antigua. So she just was for fun teaching people acting lessons. And so I would go to her classes, and she had taught Daniel Day-Lewis and Juliette Binoche. So she was a very good teacher. Now, she didn't speak English and she didn't speak Spanish. So she would teach
Wow.
us in French, and then her partner would translate it to Spanish so that we could understand. And I still remembered enough high school French to also get what she was saying. So I was hearing it twice. But I took classes. And then when I moved here to LA, I immersed myself in classes and doing student films, doing independent films to try to get as much learning, both classroom learning and on the job learning as I could.
Awesome. What are your top three principles for success?
Well, my first principle is to be curious. I have had a lifelong passion for learning and growing. And I've always said, when people ask me, what is one of your goals for being here in LA? I was like, to keep learning. because that's always in everything I do. So that's the number one principle. My second principle is focusing on the win-win, because I believe that there's a lot of people and there's a lot of systems in our world that are built on the zero sum principle of somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. So you got to be the winner. And I'm like, I think we can all be the winners. And if you look for that, and if you're striving for that, I think you feel better and you do better. And then my third principle is to find your happiness or your satisfaction in the journey or the process, not the outcomes, because we don't have that much control over the outcomes. We don't know. I mean, I'm in LA, there could be an earthquake 5 minutes from now, and we could end this conversation, right? So we don't know how things are going to turn out. I could have a goal, and it's a very reasonable goal to say, maybe that I want to win an Oscar someday. But if I'm 90 and I'm on my deathbed and I'm looking back over my life, do I really want to be miserable if I didn't get that Oscar? I want to be happy no matter what. I want to look back and say, I'm satisfied and happy with the way I live my life. And if the Oscar didn't come out, well, it's still good.
I like these. So this is where it gets fun. We're going to take these principles apart and turn them into some practical how-tos.
Okay.
All right. First one, be curious. This will be a good one. Can you turn that into a practical how-to? I feel like some kids you just notice, and maybe it's a thing. Kids generally are curious no matter what. But then I feel like as grown-ups, I don't know what changes, but you tend to get into these conversations and meetings with your own agenda and points you're trying to make. And I feel like that goes out the window. That natural curiosity is, yeah, I'd love to just hear your thoughts. And how do you keep that? How do you keep that mind frame when you are engaging and having conversations with people?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that curiosity is something natural. When you hang around with a toddler or a 5-year-old, I mean, what do people joke around? Because, oh my gosh, she never stops asking why, right? They always have all these questions about why. Why are things the way they are? We just had a toddler over here Saturday night, and she was getting in the dog bowls, and she wanted to understand everything in our house that was different from her house. She was looking at everything and touching everything and putting her hands in her mouth. And so she was curious. And as an adult, I think that one of the things that we can maintain a curiosity about is, first of all, is always trying to understand other people, because I think that curiosity gets kind of beat out of us because we're told to focus on what are you doing? What do you want? Who are you in the world? Which is all good stuff to know and to investigate. But when you are in work or even in personal relationships, if you're trying to understand the other people and understand what they want and what they need, you're going to learn more and you're going to be more effective. So even if you take it down to the level of doing a scene, because that's part of my job, just one part of my job, but that's a part of my job is doing a scene. If they say, this lady that you're playing, she's very controlling and bossy, and she doesn't listen to other people. So a lot of people will focus on, okay, so how can I do that? How can I be that? I want to be that. I want to show them that. Well, I think it works better for me when I say, why? Why is she that? I've got to think of some reasons of why she's controlling. Maybe in the past, somebody controlled her and that didn't work for her. So that's her reaction, is to be controlling. Maybe she loves her family so much. The only thing that she can do to keep them safe and happy is to be bossy and controlling. Maybe that's where the controlling comes from. So as I start to imagine the past that she's had, then I feel like I have a much richer understanding of her and her behavior, just like I would if one of my friends were being bossy and controlling. I could just be like, that's how she is. What am I going to do? Or I could be like, why is she like that? If I'm in a scene with you and all I'm focused on is, well, I've got to make sure that I say these 5 things, it's not going to be as interesting and rich as if I'm trying to understand, why did he just say, no, you're wrong? Like, what is he really believing? And of course, in real life, you can ask. When you're doing a scene, you have to imagine it. But in real life, you can ask and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Why are you saying that I'm wrong about this? Like, what do you believe? So I think curiosity is just something that you can practice and play with, whether it's in relationships, conversations like that, or like for me, when I got to Guatemala and they said, we would like you to be in charge of the social work department. And I said, I have never done social work. I don't know how to do social work. I came here to be of service, but I don't know how to run a department of social workers. And the guy who was going to be my boss said, well, you didn't know how to do finance or how to do insurance or make Volkswagens before. And you told those people how to make it better. So look at it as a management consultant job. So I was like, oh, all I have to do is go around and be curious, find out, how does it work? What are you trying to achieve? How do you do things? What things work? What things don't? And then come up with some tweaks to how to do that better. Do we need to hire different kinds of people? Do we need to set up a different kind of training program? Do we need to just clarify what our mission is? Those kinds of things.
I got a couple themes out of this. One, it's being curious leads to a lot of learning. There's this theme around understanding the why, which helps you understand the thinking of others as well.
Exactly. Because if you don't understand the why, you can't really understand whether something is being done correctly or not being done correctly. I mean, I go to doctor's offices all the time. I'm sitting there in the waiting room and I'm looking at why are they doing things like this? I mean, my management consultant brain is always going like, why are they doing things like this? Because I see different offices do things differently. Some things seem more effective for their patients, some things don't. But it's just interesting to me. I can't turn that like, why are they doing things like this? That part of my brain will not turn off.
I'm trying to build on the acting theme here. I think of Meisner or improv, where there's an emphasis on being in the moment, and it really wires you to notice all these details. I'm
Yes.
wondering if a component of that lends into being curious, because again, I'm thinking of the person that struggles with it. Maybe it is. It's just how you challenge the thinking, because that you can train on when you just start becoming noticeable, noticing details in where you're at in your environment, and then letting that drive into curiosity.
Yes, because when we're in the moment, like if you have any kind of mindfulness practice and you're always practicing just this moment, that's all we have, right? Is noticing this moment. When you're in this moment, you cannot be ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. And in acting, you have to be in the moment. Well, when you're curious, you're not worrying about the past or the future. You're worrying about what's right in front of you. And you're focused on understanding what is happening right at this moment. People who are constantly repeating the past and justifying their actions in the past, maybe, or you ask somebody, why do you do things this way? Well, this is how we've always done it. Like that answer to me is not an answer of a curious person. And so I think that curiosity does help you stay in the moment.
Yeah, I like that. I think there is a point around you got to be in the moment or presence that runs in conjunction with it. Because if you're getting too far into thinking what to say next, you're more or so orchestrating things versus really being in the moment, really paying attention to the information you're getting and letting your natural curiosity dig in to get that understanding. So I think there's a good point around that in terms of one of the steps is being in that moment to really have genuine curiosity.
Yes. So if you've ever like been in a play, you're doing the same scenes every night over and over and over again, right? Whether it's rehearsal or whether it's the actual live show, you keep doing the same scenes. But when you are in the moment and curious about what's happening with your scene partners, you have these nights where something magic can happen because somebody will say something. If you're really listening, you'll hear it in a way that you never heard it before that will spark a different reaction. You still have to say the same words back, but the words can come out in a different way. If all of a sudden something that you say, I hear something in your voice that makes me feel a little sad. It reminds me maybe of the way my dad used to talk to me, or I don't know, some little spark of sadness from something inside of me. Now I respond to you in a different way. And then something magic could happen in that moment where everybody who's there in that room is experiencing something different than the people experienced the night before. And that's very magical. It happens on sets. Also, it happens on TV and film sets because we have to do it over and over again because like, oh, the focus wasn't right, blah, blah, blah. The person was in the wrong spot or whatever. And so we have to do it over and over again. And that happens as long as you are being open and curious to what's really happening right in that moment. Something different happens sometimes. And it's happened to me before. I'm in the middle of a scene and I go, oh, I just understood that in a different way. I just felt something completely different and understood what he's trying to say to me right now.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. I love it.
Let's get into Your second principle, focusing on the win-win.
Yes, focusing on the win-win. I think just naturally, I've always been somebody who likes to work on teams and I like to collaborate with people. When I was little, I told my parents that I wanted to grow up and move to South America and teach little kids how to read. And my dad told me that was a dumb thing to want to be because he said, you can't make any money at that, which is probably true. And then I wanted to be a doctor. My mom said, well, you can't be a doctor because you're a girl. And then I said, well, then I want to be a nurse. And she said, well, you can't be a nurse because you don't like dealing with blood. And I was like, oh. So I kept coming up with these things where they had to do with helping each other, with working with other people, and I keep getting shot down. Then I get out of school and I land as a management consultant, which is the ultimate team job. And that was a really good experience because I learned there that we are all interdependent on each other in our work. We have to work together because your success and my success are linked. And that's very true if you're working in a team in an office. And then as my careers developed and I moved to Guatemala, I saw how we were all inextricably linked on a personal level. If your family's successful, then my family's successful. If my kids are successful, then your kids are successful. And the idea that one of us has to win and the other one has to lose just has never made any sense to me. When I'm reading for a role, and there's other women that are reading for the same role and they're my age, they look like me. If one of them gets the role, I firmly believe that that's how it was supposed to happen. That was her role. And if I can't do a role, if somebody offers me a role and I'm like, oh, I can't, I'm busy, or it's just not the right role for me, I will offer that director 3 other names of women that I know that have the right work ethic and the right talent and the right experience for that role. Because I firmly believe that we all win when one of us wins.
So your view on win-win is very much on the relationship. How do you keep the balance to get that win-win? Are you trying to look at things from the other person's perspective? How do you validate that you have this win-win framing?
Well, if you and I are working something out, we're negotiating, right? Typically people negotiate, and I've had people tell me, you should ask for more because they're going to offer you less, right? That typical thing of just moving the numbers up and down. And I always say, well, look, I try to be as, first of all, it's understanding of what the other person needs. Because if I can make that happen, if I can make a win happen for the other person, then they're more likely to try to make a win happen for me. And if I'm just clear on what I need, and if I say, well, look, let's say we are talking about money, and I say, I need $1,000, and you say, I literally, honestly don't have $1,000, then the win-win might be that we don't do this project because it's not going to be a win-win for either one of us. If I say, I really need 1,000, not that I'm just trying to get 1,000, but I need 1,000. If I need 1,000 and I do this, I'm going to resent you. That's not good for our relationship. That's not good for me. So I think as long as I understand what you really need, then I can do the best I can to get that for you. And hopefully the other person does that back to you.
That's a good way to look at it, is what you're actually contributing that's adding value for the relationship that you're investing in. Should we get into how to find happiness in the journey rather than the outcome?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was another one of the things that when I moved here to LA and people said, what are your goals? And I said, one of my goals is that I don't want to get burnt out and bitter. I was in my 40s when I moved to LA. And I was sitting in waiting rooms to go in for very small roles with a bunch of other people that were also in their 40s and 50s, going in for the jury foreman who says, Your Honor, we find the defendant guilty, or whatever, just like the one line things that you see on all these shows. And I was thrilled to be in those waiting rooms and thrilled to have the chance to go in there. But I saw people that had very negative attitudes. They seemed very burnt out. They were always complaining. And I thought, wow, these people have been here since they were 20, doing this over and over and over again. And this is where they are. And this is how they feel about their career. And I said to myself, I am not going to be one of those people. If 5 years from now, I either A, am sitting in this room again, still looking for that one line and I don't feel happy about it, Or even if I'm in a room where I'm reading for some huge thing, but I'm unhappy about it, I'm going to walk out the door and I'm going to do something else, because my life has taught me that I can do other things. I can decide to take a leap and try something new, and I don't have to be doing this. I love doing this, and that's important to me. I have to love it, because there's no reason to be an actor unless you love it. Most of us are never going to get fabulously wealthy or fabulously famous or whatever else people are looking for. So you have to love the work and you have to love the process. But even if I quit this and I said, okay, I'm going to run a corporation and they're going to pay me a fabulous amount of money to run the corporation, it doesn't do any good to make a fabulous amount of money if you're miserable, if you're unhappy, if you're not enjoying the time with your family, if you're not enjoying the time with your coworkers. There's no reason to do that. So you have to find the way to say, how can I enjoy this process and keep things in the balance that make me a happy, satisfied, reasonably nice person?
I want to walk transitioning from a person like I used to be at a young age that was always looking for the shortest path to success to getting into this approach where you can truly find what you love to do and build a passion to be a master at it or one of the best. Walk me through that. How would I change that sort of thinking or approach to what you described?
Well, one of the things that I've seen is that you can imagine yourself as the person that you want to be. Let's say that I think I want to be the star of a TV show. Okay. Why do I want to be the star of a TV show? What is it about that? Do I imagine myself? It's not enough to say being the star of the TV show, but maybe I imagine myself as the lady who wakes up and has somebody fixing her breakfast. And maybe she has time to do yoga and meditate before she sits down to read some scripts. And then somebody picks her up and she goes to the set and she works for 8 hours and then comes home and has dinner with her family. Maybe that's how I imagine it. So what can I do in my current life that I have now, first of all, to try to get some of that feeling into it? Maybe I can have one day a week where I really do say, this is my fancy day where I'm just going to do yoga and meditate and read scripts. And I'm going to have a cup of tea while I'm doing that. So I start getting that feeling into it. And I also am going to start paying attention to what are the things that I enjoy doing and how do I get more of that in my life. For the past, I don't know, how long have I been here? 17 years. Everybody says, and I truly believe this is true, that you need to have a day job if you're going to be an actor, right? Some people call them survival jobs. I don't like that terminology because that sounds somehow negative. Like I don't like the feeling that I'm hanging on by my fingernails. So I had a day job for several years, about 10 years. And I was making good enough money that I felt comfortable that my art wasn't suffering for my finances. My art is too important and it's too fabulous and delicate and beautiful to be burdened with keeping my lights on at my house, right? So that was fine. But then that job ended. And then everybody said, you've got to find a side hustle, figure out something that you're good at doing that you can do for money on the side again, so your art doesn't have that burden. And I thought of so many things and I was like, what am I good at? And I couldn't think of something that I was good at that I really wanted to do. And a couple of years ago, I was volunteering at the Actors Fund. I was doing people's taxes. Now, I know that does not sound fun to most people in the world doing taxes, but I loved it. I loved doing those people's taxes. I loved the whole process of taking all the classes to learn all this stuff. And then I said, wait a minute, I can do that. I can do people's taxes as a side hustle. And better yet, I can educate and coach and train people on how to get better at their own finances and their own taxes so that they don't have to be so stressed out and full of drama about it. So that's like how I found another way to bring in another stream of income without doing something that I hated doing. I'm doing something that I enjoy and that other people don't enjoy. And so I'm taking that burden off of people. So I'm always, again, the curiosity. I'm curious. What is it that I like to do? What is it that I'm good at? What is it that is helpful to other people? And that's how I find the path.
How do you find happiness in the journey when there's definitely a lot of ups and downs? And I can imagine early in the career where you're doing a lot of auditions and not getting the win on them. How do you overcome that? I feel like that's a big challenge where it's discouraging and you always second guess yourself on, is this the right thing for me?
Yeah.
Is this a sign I should quit and try something else? So
Yeah.
yeah, how do you sort of find that happiness in the journey when the road can get very rocky and rough at times?
That's the hardest thing because people always give you that advice to not put too much stress on yourself or any audition, to let it go, to move on to the next one. And that's way easier said than done. No matter what level you are in this business, unless you're like Tom Hanks or somebody like that, but everybody else is doing a lot more auditions than they are jobs. And so once I really, really understood and accepted that I am an auditioner. That's my job. My job is to audition. That is my daily bread, is auditioning, auditioning. And then every once in a while, I get the chance to go somewhere where somebody pays me and I do the job and then it's on TV or it's at the movie theaters, right? So once I really accepted that auditioning was the job, then again, my little brain kicked in and was like, oh, so this is the part that I have to figure out how to make it fun. And something crazy happened that really accelerated this for me, that helped me really finally get it, was the pandemic. Because before the pandemic, the way auditions worked is that you would have to prepare for your audition, get dressed, get in your car, drive across town, park somewhere really far, walk over to across the lot and go in and sit in a waiting room with people and go in and audition. All of that was very time consuming and stressful. And then every once in a while, they would say, hey, can you do a self tape? Can you tape yourself at your house and send it to us on the internet? And that's the audition. So when these things would happen, I thought, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do a self tape. I don't know if I'm doing it right or wrong. I'm sure that all the self tapes I did back then, all my characters seemed very unconfident in themselves and very upset, no matter what their character was supposed to be, because I was just, my thought process in my brain was like, this is terrible. I suck at this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. So when the pandemic started, I was like, whoa, this is now the new way. This is how this is going to be until the pandemic's over and beyond. And it really is going to be beyond. So I said last year in 2020, in the summer, I said, I'm getting a master's degree in self-taping. I'm going to give myself a master's degree in self-taping. And so I put on my little hat of how do I teach myself something? I took every webinar and workshop they had online. I practiced self-taping in my house. And every time I would get an audition, whether it was for a commercial or a TV show or a movie, I would literally go, yay, I get to make a little movie. And that's the attitude that I had was, yay, I'm making a little movie. Okay, what am I going to wear? How am I going to prepare? Ooh, I'm going to learn about the lights. Do I have the right kind of phone to record on? Where do I put the lights? It was a process. If I showed you some of my self tapes from 2 years ago and showed you the ones now, you would say, oh, you have become a little filmmaker, a little 30-second or 2-minute film, but still I have become a little filmmaker just because I got my technical stuff better. Then what did that do? It made me just feel more confident and comfortable to do what I already knew how to do, which was to be an actor and to do the part. And it's just so much fun. And now I do my little movie. I say, wow, that was fun. I upload it and then I forget about it because I know that so many people are going to read for that role and they're only going to choose one and sometimes zero. I've had parts where I watch the show and I go, where did my part go? Oh, they cut that character out. Like they didn't even include her. So I don't feel so bad about getting cut out. But you're going to go from hundreds of people that they saw for the role down to one. You can't beat yourself up and you can't feel bad about not being the one when you're not.
So make it fun. And your example tied into this discipline of identifying an area that you can improve and make it an objective discipline to continuously put effort to get good at it and make it your strength. You got this mindset to make it fun along the way and essentially made the challenge itself part of that journey that you wanted to thrive off of. I think there's a little bit of like climbing the mountain. Like it's painful till you get to the top and then you feel so worth it. You feel so rewarding when you finish a big project and put the heavy lifting in. If you don't, it's not as meaningful and it isn't as rewarding at the end of it. So
right.
good themes there.
And the mountain is continuous. Like every time you know how it is, you're climbing a mountain, you get to a little flat spot and you go, oh, I made it. And then you look up and you go, oh my gosh, there's still so much more mountain to go. So you have to keep putting that back in, like, okay, now the next thing, how do I make it fun? On the next thing, how do I learn how to do this and have fun with it? Again, the process, the journey has to be the objective because there's no end point. I bet you people that we know that are A-list movie actors, they have gripes, they have concerns, they have stresses, they have goals that they will probably never reach, all of them.
Keep pushing yourself. What's the best mistake you've ever made?
Well, it's funny. I got to work on a movie in Atlanta with Clint Eastwood. It was not a huge part, but it was a nice part, especially considering that Clint Eastwood was directing the movie. And I had auditioned for it, and it was a college professor, and she's saying these things, and she's talking to the kid who's like one of the main guys in the movie. And it says at the end, she's droning on and on, like it literally said that in the script. And so I knew that the last line that they had written for me was not the last line that I should say. So when I showed up there in Atlanta to work with Clint Eastwood, he came on set and everybody, his people like clumped around him to talk to him, the DP and the assistant director. And then I stood close by and I said, excuse me, I have a question before we start. And everybody was like, everybody looked at me like, why are you asking Clint Eastwood a question? Who are you? And so I said, I have a question. At the end, it says she drones on and on. I assume you don't want me to stop talking. I assume you want me to keep on just improving some stuff, right? And he's like, yeah. And I said, well, how long should I go? And he said, well, just keep going till you get tired. Now, Clint Eastwood is famous for not saying the word cut. He does not say cut at the end of scenes. And so we started doing the first take and I'm walking around the classroom. There's all these kids on their computers and I'm talking and talking and talking. And when I get to the part of she drones on and on, I kept going and going and going, making up stuff about statistics and numbers and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And I kept going so long that all of a sudden he finally said, I kind of caught his eye in the corner of the room and he very weakly said, cut, like that. And everybody busted out laughing. And I said, I thought, oh no, I've messed up because they're laughing at me. Why? I made him say cut, which he never says cut. And he looked at me, he goes, you just didn't stop. I said, hey, you told me to stop when I got tired. I'm not tired. And he busted out laughing and he was so tickled the rest of the day. He was like, he said, we need to have Elena on all our movies. And now he hasn't hired me again, but he was just having such a fun day with me because I was willing to play. But I tell you, I thought it was a mistake because I was even in my head going, when do I stop? Should I stop? Like, and I thought, am I messing up? Here I am, my one chance to work with Clint Eastwood. But it turned out to be a fabulous mistake because then I was part of the team. We were playing, we were creating together, and then we got in each other's rhythms. And it was just a wonderful day on set. But yeah, at first it felt like a mistake.
Yeah. Once you get over, you own it and you progress from it.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too, is I think when you make a mistake, if you own it, then most people aren't going to blame you for it versus getting defensive or pretending like it didn't happen or just over apologizing for it. That's not helpful.
Elena, enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for taking the time to share some of your success principles.
Well, thank you, Karan. This was great. And I'm so glad that you're doing this. All right.
Awesome, Elena. Well, thanks so much for being part of it.
Sure. Thank you.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Talk soon. Bye.